Also grateful to be here. I appreciate it. Mr. Bloom, phenomenal observations. I think Zoom has been pretty pervasive across industries. Um, what I'm seeing, we started our transition in January, which is very lucky, quite honestly. But what we're seeing is that the space that we're in, which is somewhere between financial conversations, education, and really wellness dialogues, has evolved into really two spaces. One, everything is online, and because every bit of content that could ever transition is now bombarding that space, there's a need for personalization more than we ever expected. Going online courses and content now is a very crowded field. So we're finding ways to be a little bit more personalized through technology. So we're hosting workshops, but we've had to develop tools using technology that address a person, not just a blanket. And that's been a really interesting challenge. And in some ways, very fun. And in other ways, it can be a headache. But I think the emphasis is on the person over just the person on the other side of the screen as just an object, really getting into detail. The other thing that it's done is it's really forced our team to evolve in the way that we communicate. We're a really small shop that normally spends a lot of time together. And we've had to consider, one, do we communicate effectively via Slack or other tools? But then two, we've had to be a lot more vulnerable in dialogues because mental health changes and shifts have really cornered the way that we normally operate. So as an extrovert, all my outlets are gone. I've had to find different outlets for what I do. And I'm sitting in this exact chair way too often. So it's forced not only innovation on the outward front, but it's really forced us to innovate internally, not only using tech, but really evolving our communication as well. We've been very mission oriented since we started. And we had a conversation maybe 3 years ago, given that we're in this financial education space, right? We come into businesses and we help people understand their money so they can show up more effectively to work. There's a lot of data there that I'll skip over, but we had this question, do we do better in a recession than we do out of one? And it caused us to really think about how do we show up? What problem do we solve? And how do we get hyper specific on that? And through March and April, it was actually very terrifying because we didn't feel like we were capable, given the technology suite that we had, to show up where we were needed most. And when you think about someone being financially stressed, the general consensus is that they paralyze. And as a mission-oriented company, an impact-oriented company, we really struggled to mobilize fast enough to really solve the problem. And the last 6 months have been really intensive efforts. My team has been just incredible through this in dealing with me trying to move at the speed of light and simultaneously not burn the bridges while we move. But this has forced us to think about not what is the technology, but how do we use the technology differently to get an end result that's helpful for another person on the other side of the screen. And we are consistently challenged by that question. And I don't think we're quite done solving that puzzle. And whether it be gym closures or music venues shutting down, or the way that we communicate about money in business as leaders, I still think there's a lot to discover in the intersection of purpose and technology. Call it conscious capitalism, call it what you want. There is still a lot of room for growth and change here. Love living in the clouds. I spend a lot of time dreaming, and I really appreciate that. But I also like to come to ground level and figure out, how do we bridge the gap between what is available and what people have access to. So a great example, the average person doesn't need some of the technology that we as CEOs may need. But if we're going to communicate effectively, I have to be able to transition from the clouds back to the ground. And our goal right now is to find the tech that's already in play and use it while maintaining a little bit of foresight into what's coming. And we have our own ideas, but there's still a lot of uncertainty, and it's hard to plan super far ahead right now. I imagine all 4 of 5, 6, however many of us are here are probably feeling that. You can't project the same way. And despite all that, the future has never been certain. As a kid, I used to use cups and wood as like bridges. So, that's just kind of a history. But I think in a lot of ways, We're trying to take technology that acts as a base and then use another piece of technology on top of it to build a stronger foundation to grow. I think there's light and dark in everything. And in some way, when you stretch a system or it becomes divisive and starts to experience a lot of tension, that snapping effect can be really good. The education system is going through this right now. And I do think there are some really strong cultural challenges that we're going to experience as far as access goes. But that's only one side of that coin. There's also a tremendous opportunity for people to access jobs that they might never have had an opportunity to get simply because you can do it remotely now. So while these things start to collapse in on each other and it becomes harder to differentiate, is this good, is it bad? Because we look at both sets of data, I try to look at where's the positive and separate it as far as possible from where's the cost and try to see those as different mechanisms for change. Because there's a tremendous amount of change happening either way in both sides. And from a financial side, you know, this is our work. So I will not belabor that point, but the concept that finance and personal finance are grossly problematic for the average American is very, very pressing. However, this is a great time to look at that as an opportunity to present education on this front, to present solutions in the workforce on this front, to present wellness as a concept that is now like on the nose of dialogue in corporate culture rather than at the back of it. So there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. And I think that we should all be prepared as business owners to take on a little bit more awareness of what's happening with our people in regards to the cost of technology, rather than just barreling forward and expecting it's all going to go perfect.